We didn't plan the trip very far in advance. It wasn't a big honeymoon, not the kind people post photos of or talk about for years. We'd talked about something larger eventually, somewhere further away, but after the wedding we were both exhausted in that pleasant, earned way. We wanted quiet, time, a place where nothing was expected of us. She suggested the town while we were still packing. "I know somewhere," she said, casually, like she was recommending a cafe she'd been to once. I don't remember much about it, just that it felt safe. My parents took me there for a summer when I was a kid. I asked her where it was. She hesitated, smiling a little. "I'd have to look it up. It's not really memorable like that." That should have stood out to me more than it did. At the time, I thought it was sweet, nostalgic, the kind of place you don't remember for landmarks, but for how it made you feel. We were newly married. Everything felt symbolic. Returning somewhere from her childhood felt like a good omen, like folding the past into the future. We loaded the car and left early the next morning. The drive was easy at first. Long stretches of road, low conversation. The comfortable quiet that comes from knowing you don't need to fill the space anymore. She leaned her head against the window and pointed out things she half recognized, though the confidence in her voice came and went. "I think there used to be a diner around here," she said once, squinting at a bend in the road. There wasn't. She laughed it off. "Guess not." The road narrowed as we went. The scenery shifted gradually enough that it didn't feel abrupt. Trees closer together, fewer signs, fewer turnoffs. My phone lost signal somewhere after a long downhill stretch, though hers kept working just long enough to pull up directions. "See?" she said. "It's not far now." The town didn't announce itself. No welcome sign. No name carved into stone. Just a gentle transition from road to street, as if we'd crossed an invisible seam. Buildings appeared without any sense of planning. Wooden structures, low and broad, most of them somewhere between functional and unfinished. Workshops, mostly. That was my first impression. Long tables near open doors, conveyor belts humming softly, even in places that didn't seem actively used. People standing or sitting nearby, not working exactly, but not idle either, like they were waiting for something to move again. She relaxed the moment we arrived. I didn't notice how tense she'd been until that tension disappeared. Her shoulders dropped. She took a deep breath and smiled. The kind of smile that isn't for anyone else. "It's just like I remember," she said. I looked around. The buildings were unfamiliar, but that wasn't strange in itself. Towns change. What unsettled me, faintly, was that nothing looked new. Everything felt maintained, but not updated. Preserved rather than improved. We parked near a wide building at the edge of the town. It was listed as accommodation, though it looked more like a hybrid between a cabin and a workshop. Wood-paneled walls, broad windows, sturdy tables inside. A conveyor belt ran along one wall, currently idle, dustless. "This is it," she said, with certainty. Inside, the air smelled clean and faintly metallic. Someone greeted us immediately, stepping out from behind one of the tables. "Welcome back," they said to her. I paused. She didn't. "Thank you," she replied, as if that made perfect sense. The person turned to me next, smiling politely. "You'll be staying as well?" "Yes," I said. "We're married." There was the briefest pause, not confusion, more like recalculation. "I see," they said. "You can leave your things here for now." They handed her a small key, smooth and warm from use. "Everything you'll need is already set up," they said to her. "You remember where to go." She nodded, already moving toward the back of the building. I followed, bags in hand, telling myself I was imagining the momentary disconnect. Small towns have their own rhythms, their own assumptions. The room they led us to was simple but comfortable. 2 beds pushed together to make one, a small window looking out over the back of the town. From here, I could see more workshops, more belts, more people moving in slow, deliberate patterns. She sat on the bed and sighed, content. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," she said. "Missed what?" I asked. She frowned slightly, then smiled again. "I don't know, just this." I unpacked while she explored, touching the furniture, opening drawers as if checking for something she expected to find. She seemed calmer with every minute, while a faint unease settled into me, subtle enough that I kept dismissing it. At dinner, we were seated at a long table with others from the town. No one asked how long we'd be staying. No one asked where we were from. They asked her questions about how long it had been, whether she remembered certain routines, if she'd prefer to work mornings or afternoons. I tried to answer once, filling in a detail about our drive. They smiled politely and continued speaking to her. I laughed it off at first, leaning closer, making a joke about small-town hospitality. She squeezed my hand under the table, distracted but affectionate. Later that night, as we lay together, I asked her if anything felt strange. She turned toward me, genuinely puzzled. "No, why?" I searched for words that didn't sound accusatory. "I just feel a bit out of sync." She smiled softly and rested her forehead against mine. "You're just tired. Tomorrow will feel better." I wanted to believe her. The next morning, she woke early, energized in a way I hadn't seen since before the wedding. She dressed quickly, excitement humming under her movements. "They asked if I wanted to help out today," she said, "just for a few hours." "Help with what?" I asked. She shrugged, already tying her hair back. "I don't know. It's what people do here." I hesitated. "Do you want me to come with you?" She paused, considering it. "You could," she said, "but I think it might be easier if you rest. They'll find something for you later." Something about the phrasing stuck with me. She kissed me before leaving, warm and familiar, and for a moment the unease receded. Newlyweds get space sometimes. That was normal. I wandered the town while she was gone. The further I walked from the center, the less complete things felt. Roads that curved back on themselves, signs without lettering, paths that seemed to lead somewhere until you followed them, only to find yourself back where you started. No one stopped me, no one warned me, but no one followed me either. When she returned, she looked happier than she had in days. "They remembered me," she said, breathless. "Not by name, but they remembered." I smiled for her. That night, as we sat together in the dim light of the room, listening to the low hum of machinery outside, I felt the first real spike of fear, not because of anything that had happened, but because of how quickly she had begun to belong, and how easily I could imagine myself being left behind. I woke to the sound of the conveyor belts. Not loud, not intrusive, just constant. A low, even hum that sat beneath everything else, like the town's heartbeat. Once I noticed it, I couldn't stop hearing it. Not outside, not inside, not even when I pressed my head into the pillow. She was already awake, dressed, calm, sitting on the edge of the bed, tying her shoes with practiced ease. "You're up early again," I said. She smiled. "I slept really well." I hadn't, My dreams had been full of half-finished places, rooms without doors, roads that narrowed until they became hallways. I didn't tell her that. I was thinking, I said carefully, maybe today we take a drive, see what's around here, make it more of a trip. She hesitated just for a moment. Why? She asked. The question wasn't defensive. It was genuinely curious, like the idea hadn't occurred to her. I don't know, I said. We came all this way, might as well explore. She nodded slowly. Okay, if you want. But the enthusiasm from the day before wasn't there. We left mid-morning. The car started easily enough, engine turning over without complaint. As we pulled onto the main road, I felt a flicker of relief. Movement, direction, something familiar. The town thinned quickly behind us. Buildings gave way to open stretches of land that felt unfinished, like the background of a photograph that hadn't been fully rendered. The road stayed smooth, well-maintained, but oddly narrow. No markings, no shoulders. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I don't remember it being this close, she said finally. Close to what? I asked. She frowned at the road ahead. The edge. The first sign we saw wasn't broken. It was blank. A metal post stood by the roadside, the outline of a sign still visible, bolts rusted into place. But the surface itself was smooth, unmarked, as if whatever had once been printed there had been removed rather than erased. I slowed the car. That's weird, I said. She leaned forward, squinting. I don't think it was always like that. We kept driving. The road curved gently to the left, then back to the right. Trees pressed closer on either side, their branches forming a loose canopy overhead. The light dimmed, though the sky above was still bright. After another bend, the road opened up, and we were back at the town. Not the center, the outskirts. A row of workshops I recognized from the night before. I checked the dashboard clock. We hadn't been driving long enough to loop back. That's not right, I said. She stared out the window, confused, but not alarmed. Did you turn around? No. We tried again. A different road this time, branching off near a cluster of storage buildings. This one sloped downward, the air growing cooler as we descended. I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. Halfway down, we passed another sign. This one had words. Out of service. No explanation, no detour indicated. The road beyond it continued anyway. I hesitated. She looked at me. Maybe they're fixing it? I drove on. The pavement grew rougher, uneven under the tires. The trees thinned, giving way to a wide, open stretch of land that felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. Too flat, too still. Then the road simply stopped, not abruptly. It tapered off, asphalt crumbling into packed dirt, then into nothing at all. Beyond it, the land stretched on, featureless and pale, like an unfinished thought. I turned the engine off. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Let's go back, I said finally. The car didn't start. I tried again. Nothing. She watched me, brow furrowed. Not afraid, just concerned. That's strange, she said. It was working fine. I got out and opened the hood, though I wouldn't have known what to look for, even if something had been obviously wrong. Everything looked normal, clean, maintained, like it had been checked recently. When I got back in, the car started immediately. I didn't question it. We drove back the way we came. The road reformed beneath us without resistance, smoothing out, guiding us gently upward until the town appeared again, familiar and intact. I parked harder than I meant to. This place is wrong, I said. She exhaled slowly. I think you're just not used to it. That doesn't explain the roads. She considered that, genuinely. Maybe you're not supposed to leave that way. I stared at her. What way? She hesitated. I don't know. I just mean, there's a way things work here. That afternoon, I tried walking instead. I followed a narrow path behind our building, winding between workshops and storage sheds until the sounds of the town dulled behind me. The path split, then split again, each branch subtly redirecting me inward. Every time I thought I was moving away, the hum of the conveyor belts grew louder. I passed a man standing by one of the paths. Is there a road out of town? I asked him. He smiled, polite and puzzled. Why would there be? To go somewhere else. He nodded slowly. People usually don't. Why not? He gestured vaguely around us. Everything's already here. That night, I told her we should leave in the morning. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. I just want to give it a little more time, she said. It hasn't done anything wrong. That was the part I couldn't explain. The town hadn't threatened us. No doors had been locked. No warnings issued. And yet, every attempt to leave had folded back in on itself, like the idea of escape was being gently corrected. As we lay in bed, the hum outside felt louder than ever. I held her close, tighter than I meant to, afraid that if I let go, even for a moment, the town might notice and decide which of us belonged. After the roads failed, we stopped talking about leaving. Not because we'd agreed to stay, but because every conversation about it slid sideways into something else. Logistics, meals, routines. The town had a way of redirecting urgency into process, like panic was just another inefficiency to be smoothed out. The next morning, someone knocked on our door. Not loudly, not urgently, just a polite, practiced rhythm. They spoke to her. We've scheduled you for the morning block, they said, smiling. It'll help you settle back in. She glanced at me. Is that okay? I opened my mouth to say no, to insist we do something else, to reclaim some authority I could feel slipping, but the words caught. Yeah, I said instead. That's fine. The look of relief on the person's face was immediate. They didn't look at me again. She left with them, pulling on a light jacket, promising she'd be back soon. I watched her go from the doorway, noting how easily she matched their pace, how naturally she fell into step. The door closed behind her with a soft, final sound. I stood there longer than I meant to. When I went out into the town, it felt busier than before. The conveyor belts were running now, slow and steady. Objects moved along them, boxes, trays, items I couldn't quite categorize. Everything was labeled, but not with words. Symbols instead, repeating shapes that meant nothing to me. People worked in silence, or with low, efficient exchanges. Laughter, no complaints, just movement. I approached one of the tables, unsure what I was expected to do. A woman looked up at me, eyes flicking briefly past my face, as if checking for someone else behind me. You can wait here, she said. For what? I asked. She tilted her head. Assignment. I waited. Time passed strangely. Not slowly, exactly. Just unevenly. Moments stretched, then collapsed. I found it hard to track how long I stood there before someone else arrived. They handed me a clipboard. No instructions, no explanation. Just a list of items I didn't recognize, marked with symbols that matched the conveyor belts. What is this? I asked. They smiled, apologetic. It's simpler if you don't think about it. That was the first time anyone had acknowledged my confusion. I tried to follow along, to mimic what others were doing. But every time I reached for something, someone gently redirected me. Not that one. Over here. That's not for you. Eventually, I stopped trying. When she returned, hours later, she looked fulfilled in a way that hurt to see. "They gave me something I'm good at," she said, excited. I didn't even realize how much I missed it. "Missed what?" I asked. She paused. "I don't know, just working like this." She showed me her hands, clean, unmarked, steady. "They said I'll be on a regular schedule now." The word regular lodged itself in my chest. That night, at dinner, I noticed the way people sat closer to her, the way conversation subtly oriented around her presence. When she spoke, others listened. When I did, they waited politely for me to finish before continuing where they'd left off. No one was rude. No one was cruel. That was the problem. Over the next few days, patterns emerged. She was given responsibilities, small at first, then larger ones. Keys appeared in her pockets without her remembering where they'd come from. People asked her opinions, deferred to her judgment. I, meanwhile, was managed. Every task I was given felt provisional, temporary, as if the town were testing how long I could remain useful before becoming inconvenient. I tried to talk to her about it one night. "Do you ever feel like they're separating us?" I asked. She looked genuinely surprised. "No, why would they? I don't know. It just feels like I'm being kept out of things." She reached for my hand, squeezing it. "You're just not used to how things work here." There it was again. Here. As if it were a fixed point. As if here had always existed for her, waiting. I started noticing how the machinery reacted to her. Belts adjusted their speed when she approached. Lights brightened subtly in rooms she entered. Doors opened before she reached them. None of that happened for me. Once, I tried to follow her into a back area she'd been reassigned to. A man stepped into my path. Not blocking it exactly, just occupying the space. "Authorized personnel only," he said kindly. "I'm her husband," I replied. He smiled, the way people do when they don't want to embarrass you. "Yes, we know." "That should count for something." He considered that. "It did," he said, "at first." I didn't know what that meant, but the implication settled heavily in my gut. That night, I dreamed of conveyor belts, not moving objects, but moments, memories, versions of myself sliding past, being sorted, diverted, removed. I woke to find her already gone. Later, when I asked where she was, someone told me she'd been moved to a different section, one better suited to her experience. "What about me?" I asked. They hesitated. "Just long enough." "We're still determining that." The town wasn't waiting anymore. It was working. And I was beginning to understand that whatever it was doing, it wasn't being done to her. It was being done around me. The first thing I noticed was that people had stopped asking where she was. They didn't announce her movements anymore. No one told me when she'd been reassigned, or which section she was working in. It was as if her presence had become assumed, constant enough that it no longer required explanation. Mine, meanwhile, felt increasingly conditional. When I walked through the town now, I felt the difference immediately. Conversations dipped when I approached, not out of secrecy, but because I was no longer relevant to them. The town didn't tense around me. It simply adjusted, the way a room does when someone stands in the wrong place. I tried to follow her one afternoon. I knew where she was supposed to be working, one of the larger workshop buildings near the center, where the conveyor belts fed into a series of long tables arranged in careful symmetry. I waited until I saw her cross the threshold, then followed a few steps behind. I didn't make it far. Someone stepped into my path, not hurried, not aggressive. "I'm with her," I said. They nodded. "Yes. That means I should be allowed in." They glanced past me, toward the interior of the building, where she was already moving between tables, confident, familiar. "She's authorized," they said gently. "And I'm not?" There was a pause, a real one this time. "You're not listed," they said. The words landed harder than I expected. "Listed where?" I asked. They smiled, the same polite, neutral expression I'd seen 100 times since arriving. "Where it matters." I didn't argue. I stepped back, letting them pass. Through the open doorway, I watched her laugh at something someone said, the sound light and unguarded. She looked like she belonged. That night, I searched, not frantically, not desperately, with a quiet determination that surprised me. I went through public records posted on walls and boards around the Fuse town, schedules, rosters, diagrams of workflow. Everything was organized, meticulously so, but nothing was written in a language I recognized. Except for names, hers appeared often, always in the same neat script, always alone. Mine didn't appear at all. I told myself there had to be a mistake, that I was looking in the wrong place, that spouses weren't listed separately. But the more I looked, the more obvious it became. She wasn't missing me. The town was. The realization didn't come all at once. It crept in through a series of small, undeniable moments. The way she could touch certain pieces of machinery without gloves, while I was redirected away. The way doors opened for her before she reached them. The way people mirrored her posture when she stood nearby, unconsciously aligning themselves with her presence. I tried an experiment. One morning, I stood perfectly still in the center of a walkway, blocking the path. People adjusted around me, stepping aside, without irritation, without comment. When she did the same thing later that day, laughing as she realized she'd paused mid-thought, everything stopped. People waited. Someone gently guided her forward, apologizing for the inconvenience. The town didn't just notice her, it oriented around her. I started paying attention to how people spoke to us. To me, they explained. To her, they assumed. Rules were offered to me like instructions. To her, they were reminders. One evening, I finally said it out loud. "I think they're trying to separate us." She looked at me, concerned but calm. "Why would they do that?" I struggled to answer, because I couldn't find malice, or threat, or even intention in the way I'd expected. The town wasn't hostile to me. It wasn't plotting. It was simply continuing. "They don't see us the same way," I said finally. She smiled, soft and sad. "You've always been a little anxious." That hurt more than anything else she could have said. I went back to the outskirts of the town that night, to the place where the road had ended. I stood there for a long time, staring out at the pale, unfinished land beyond. For the first time, I noticed something I'd missed before. There were footprints in the dirt, not leading away, leading back, all of them. The next day, I was called to a table near the center of town. Not asked, called. A man I hadn't seen before stood there, older than most, his movements slower, more deliberate. He gestured for me to sit. "This won't take long," he said. I sat. "We've been reviewing your status," he continued, "and we've reached a conclusion." I waited. "She's cleared," he said. My chest tightened. "Cleared for what?" He folded his hands. "Continuation." "And me?" Another pause. "You're unresolved." The word felt clinical, final. "What does that mean?" I asked. He met my eyes, not unkindly. "It means you don't belong to the version of her that exists here." I shook my head. "I'm her husband." "Yes," he said. "You're very important to her, elsewhere." The world seemed to tilt. "She came back alone," he continued. "Not physically, but fundamentally. You followed." I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. "We're not taking her from you," he said, as if sensing the direction of my thoughts. "We're returning her." "Returning her to what?" "To herself," he said simply. "To the version we recognize." I thought of the way she'd relaxed when we arrived, how easily she'd slipped into the town's rhythms, how quickly she'd stopped questioning. I thought of the honeymoon photos we'd planned to take, the future we'd assumed was shared. "When will you do it?" I asked. He tilted his head. "It's already happening." That evening, she didn't come back to our room. When I asked where she was, someone told me she'd been moved to a more permanent space, one closer to the center. "She's comfortable there," they added, as reassurance. I stood alone in the room, surrounded by our unpacked things. Clothes, bags, objects that suddenly felt like props from a life the town no longer acknowledged. For the first time since we'd arrived, I felt truly afraid. Not because of what they might do to her, but because of how gently they were doing it. And how certain I was becoming that, in the end, they wouldn't have to take her away at all. They would simply let her go. They didn't come for her in the night. There was no urgency, no confrontation, no moment where I was forced to make a decision I could pretend mattered. Morning arrived the same way it always had here. Light filtering in through the window at a careful angle, the low hum of machinery settling into its daily rhythm. The town woke the way a body wakes, gradually and without surprise. I went to find her. No one stopped me. That was the first sign. The building she'd been moved to stood near the center of town, broader and more complete than the others. Its walls were smoother, its doors heavier. It didn't look newer, just more certain of its purpose. Inside, the air was warm. She was standing near one of the tables when I saw her, speaking with someone I didn't recognize. She looked relaxed, grounded. The faint tension I'd grown used to seeing in her shoulders was gone. I said her name. She turned. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw recognition flicker across her face. Not memory, something closer to reflex. The way you react to a sound you've heard often enough to internalize, even if you no longer know its meaning. Then it passed. "Oh," she said politely. "Hi." The word landed wrong. I took a step toward her. "It's me." She smiled again, uncertain this time, and glanced at the person beside her. They nodded, reassuringly. "He's been helping us settle things," they said to her. "He won't be staying." She looked back at me, studying my face with gentle curiosity. "I'm sorry," she said. "Have we met?" The room didn't spin. I didn't collapse. The world didn't react at all. "I'm your husband," I said. The word sounded thin here, fragile, like it didn't belong in the air. She frowned, trying to place it. "I don't think so." Something in her voice wasn't cruel or dismissive. It was simply complete, as if the question had already been answered somewhere deeper, and she was just relaying the result. "You came with me," I said. "We drove here together." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I came back," she said. "I remember that." The phrasing was careful. I looked around the room, at the conveyor belts running steadily along the walls, at the people working without urgency, without distress, at how easily she fit into the space, like a piece returned to its original position. The man from the table in the center of town appeared beside us. I hadn't seen him approach. "This is the last stage," he said quietly. "There's no need to make it harder than it already is." I laughed once, short and broken. "You already did." He didn't disagree. "She's stable now," he continued. "The interference has resolved itself." I stepped closer to her, careful, as if sudden movement might startle her. "Do you remember being happy with me?" I asked. She considered the question seriously. "I remember being happy," she said. "I don't remember you being part of it." That was the moment I understood. They hadn't erased me from her. They had simply returned her to a version of herself that existed before me and didn't require me to function. She reached out then, hesitating, and touched my arm lightly. The contact was brief, exploratory. "You feel familiar," she said. "Like something I misplaced a long time ago." I swallowed. "I love you." Her expression softened, apologetic. "I believe you." They led her away without force. She didn't resist. She didn't look back. She walked with them easily, already engaged in conversation, already reintegrating into a life that had never included me. No doors slammed shut. No alarms sounded. The town continued as it always had. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, unsure what I was waiting for. A correction, a reversal, anything. Nothing came. Eventually, I walked back to the room we'd shared. I packed my things slowly, methodically. When I was finished, the room looked exactly as it had when we first arrived, untouched. I tried the roads one last time. They were still out of service. At the edge of town, where the land faded into nothing, I stopped and looked back. From here, the place looked peaceful, complete, like a memory that had settled into its proper shape. I realized then that the town hadn't trapped me. It had finished with me. I don't know how long I stayed after that. Time works differently when there's nothing left to wait for. Sometimes I think I still hear the hum of the conveyor belts, even when I close my eyes, sorting, adjusting, returning things to where they belong. She belongs there. I don't. And the worst part, the part I can't escape, is knowing the town didn't take her from me. It simply remembered her correctly and let the rest fall away.